Homon Fielder. He's gone to the dog.
Welcome to the Gone to the Dogs podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fielder, and man, it's good to be talking to you in a new year, 2022, the year of the twos, it looks like. Wow, man, it's hard to believe that another one's rolled around. I'm recording this on December 29th, and actually just a few days before the new year, but when you hear it on January 3rd, we'll be well on our way into a new year. I'll be looking toward the weekend to make my annual drive up to Orangeburg, South Carolina, to attend the Grand American Coon Hunt up there, something that I first attended back in the 60s. I think it was the first year or possibly the second that I went to Orangeburg on my way to college in Lakeland, Florida from West Virginia. Saw all the pickup trucks, the dog boxes, all the people, all the motels and restaurants jam-packed. And the Grand American has truly been a grand tradition for coon hunters for all those years now. And I'm really looking forward to being there again. I'll be in the American Cooner Full Cry booth there in the big white vendor barn. As you come in, the side entrance will be the first booth on the right, my usual spot there. I'll have autographed copies of Gone to the Dogs, A Coon Hunter's Journey, if that interests you. We'll have subscriptions for American Cooner and Full Cry magazine available, as well as sample copies. And just look forward to 3 great days of visiting with the folks that always come by. The Grand American, if you haven't been there, you need to go and take in all the sights and all the vendors and and all that entails. Here I am entering a new year. I've still got a little tickle in my throat from a little upper respiratory thing that I dealt with before I went to the White River, and it still seems to be hanging on. So if I'm doing a little coughing and wheezing here this morning, you'll know what that's all about. I do want to take this opportunity to thank the good folks at DU Supply, Buddy Woodbury, Jason Doobie, Shannon, my producer, everyone in that organization that makes this podcast possible. And as I've said many times, if you're looking for anything in the way of hunting supplies, and especially the electronics that are available out there to us today, you need to contact the folks at dusupply.com, and they will certainly take care of you. And I, from all testimonies and personal experience, I can say that their customer service is second to none. For some time now, people have been asking me to tell the story of my family and the line of Plott dogs that we started back in the 1950s, and that my dad and I hunted these dogs and did some breeding of these dogs. And in fact, I have to say that I am quite proud of the fact that as a family, we were able to start our own strain within the Plott breed and to, carry that on as long as my dad was alive. Regrettably, my father passed away in October of 2008. And with him and with my work schedule at that time, I was with the AKC, it became necessary for us to kind of close that chapter of our lives. But there is an interesting story here, especially if you're involved in the Plott breed. And I'm going to spend the time with you here this week talking to you about this venture that my dad and I set out on. We really didn't have any plans. I was just a kid at the time to, develop our own strain of dogs. But I think it's a pretty interesting story. And I'm going to be sharing it with you solo. So if you get tired of this voice, I'm sorry about that. We will continue with some terrific guests in the new year. that's something that I want to bring to you each week and let you meet some of the people that I meet out there on the highways and byways that I believe have a story to tell and will be interesting and entertaining to you. So, what I'd like to do today is kind of introduce how we got started in the Plott breed. Many people know that down through my years at the registry, I was known as a Plott man. That was the breed that my dad provided for me to hunt when I was a kid, and I liked them, and I continued on with them down through the years. And only recently, actually for the second time, have been hunting a walker dog, and I enjoy, of course, all breeds of coon hounds, and always have. And but anyway, the Plott breed has been the one that's been nearest and dearest to my heart. I'm going to tell you this story. I'm going to try to make it as brief as possible, but at the same time, the reason that I'd like to tell this story to you is to give you hope if you are a new hunter or new to coon hounds or big game dogs, and you have aspirations to do something down the road. Make your efforts in hunting and breeding and so forth count for something. Put create something that folks will remember down the road. I hope that I'll be able to say a few things to you today that would encourage you along that way and maybe give you a few tips as to how, you might be able to achieve what my dad and I achieved over the years. And certainly there are other breeders that have done much, much more, made a much bigger splash in this tree dog pond than we did. But let's just get into the story of the bear pen Plotts. I'm going to start by reading a letter to you. Dear friend, I found a man on Potts Creek that will take us straight to a bear on Monday. Don't fail me, as I think this will be a sure race. I'll be looking for other territory the last of the week. Very truly yours, Isaiah Kidd. Now, Plott fanciers will remember Isaiah Kidd as being one of the oldest and most influential of the Plott breeders down through the years. The letter that I just read to you was written on Wednesday, December 15th, 1965. That's 56 years and about 13 or 12 or 13 days before the recording of this podcast. The letter was written to my dad, Homon Fielder, in cursive by Mr. Kidd, who was then in his 80s and still actively breeding and hunting his Plott dogs. He lived in a small community in Monroe County, West Virginia, called Sinks Grove. And Plott fanciers back in the 60s will remember the small classified ads that Mr. Kidd would post in the Coonhound magazine that said, come see the oldest Plott breeder in his glory. The latch string always hangs on the outside. In other words, he was welcoming hunters to come by and visit with him, and which my dad and I did many, many times. We took a lot of coon hunts with Mr. Kidd on his farm. And I remember the very first time I went bear hunting with hounds, I was placed on a stand under a big oak tree on Potts Creek there off of Peters Mountain in Monroe County, West Virginia, with Mr. Isaiah Kidd. And so he was somebody that I looked up to very much as a kid growing up, and really enjoyed the hunts that I took, and was always so fascinated by the dogs that he bred. His stories would just captivate me as I sat on the porch, as he and my dad would be sitting in the rockers or the swing and be talking about Plott dogs. And Mr. Kidd, with a twinkle in his eye, would point eastward to the great Peters Mountain that you could see the ridge that stretched from north to south. he would talk about the hunts that he took with some of his favorite dogs like Old Bell and Crying Sam. And man, my eyes would be big as saucers as he'd talk about the time that they ran a bear for 3 days, fighting the bear back there on Peters Mountain, and he'd point to that gap in the mountain that you could see in the distance. It was a magical place for me, for sure, to go to Isaiah Kidd's farm. Well, Isaiah figured very heavily in the beginning of the bear pen plots. The first dog that my dad got, the first UKC registered Plott, was a 2-year-old female. He named her Fielders June. I still have her 3-generation pedigree. In fact, part of it appears in the graphic on the cover of my book, Gone to the Dogs, A Coon Hunter's Journey. June had some kid breeding in her background, and a fellow named Opal Bennett that lived in a small community outside our town named Crow, West Virginia, had 2 Plott dogs, June and her mother Daisy, who was 2 years older than her. That would make Daisy 4 and June 2. My dad went coon hunting with Opal Bennett to the Williams River area in the National Forest there in West Virginia. And my dad was hunting a grade black and tan named Sam at the time. And Sam struck a track along Williams River there, but soon came back to Dad with his bristles all up. And these 2 Plott dogs swam the river and took the track on. And when the hunters went down and looked in the sandbar there on the river, they saw the track of a bear. And those 2 females ran the bear back on the mountain. My dad recalled hearing them catch the bear, the fight that ensued, and then a howling snowstorm came up and covered the sounds of the dogs, and they were lost. And there were no tracking collars at that time, no GPS, no way to really track the dogs except on foot. And because of the weather, they had to leave the dog. And June was recovered. Her mother, Daisy, never did appear again, and it was assumed that the bear killed her. But at any rate, my dad was so impressed by that first experience of running a bear with hounds that he purchased June for the price of a .22 rifle that he had. He traded the rifle to Mr. Bennett, and June came to live with us. And I'll never forget the day that he brought her home. I'd never seen a dog quite like her. She was just coal black. She had no brindle whatsoever. She had a gray muzzle that was typical of Plott dogs in that day, and it still is. But anyway, June was used on coon. She was a good coon dog. She had a good cold nose. However, she wasn't perhaps the fastest track dog. My dad hunted with a fellow that had a birdsong bred coonhound named Track that could really drift the track. But he and old June made a good team, and they treated a lot of mountain ringtails back in that day. Well, Dad decided that he wanted to raise a litter of puppies, and he took June up to Athens, Ohio, where a fellow named Harry Pettit had a good Plott stud dog named Pettit's Timber Tim. Tim was really a good-looking Plott, about a 50-pound solid brindle, top coon dog. And from that litter of June bred to Tim, there were 2 male pups that my dad kept, Smokey and Joe. And I more or less claimed Joe, and Smokey was really the better dog of the 2. Unfortunately, he got killed on the highway when he got out of the pen one night, and Dad found him the next morning on the highway, dead. But so that was kind of the end of that litter. Joe, I don't remember what happened with Joe. I think he was sold. But any rate, then June was bred to Mr. Kidd's stud dog at that time, a dog called Kidd's Rock. Now, there's a lot of stories about Kidd's Rock that I could share with you, but for the sake of time, I won't. I remember one time treeing a coon in an apple tree, June and Rock treed together, and I was sent to climb up the apple tree and shake out the coon, and that was my first experience at doing that, and I was afraid, but I did finally get the coon shook out to the dogs, but that's just one of those memories. I've got a million of them. Anyway, when June was bred to Kidd's Rock, there were a couple dogs that my dad kept. One was a buckskin. He called him Buck. And the other was a gray brindle female named Hardwood Gypsy. Now, at that time, my dad's kennel name was Hardwood. That's what prefix he put before his dogs' names. And anyway, Gypsy became a good little dog. Buck, unfortunately, died at a young age and was showing all signs of making a good dog when he died unexpectedly. But Gypsy then was bred to a kid-bred male named Kidd's Boss that was owned by a local hunter there named Roy Prince there in our area. And Boss was a typical kid-bred looking dog. He looked a lot like Kidd's Jeff. These dogs were what was called gray brindle. They were a light brindle, not really a yellow. They had a lot of graying in their color, and that's what Isaiah Kidd was known for, was breeding the gray brindle Plotts. So anyway, Boss was bred to Gypsy, and they produced a female that we called Bear Pen Honey. Now, by this time, my dad had begun using the Bear Pen prefix to his dogs' names. And there's a little story about that. He and I seemed, at first I thought that he had named his kennel for Bear Pen Ridge, which is a ridge in the Smoky Mountains National Park that was mentioned several times in a book, 20 Years Hunting Fishing in the Great Smoky Mountains, written by Samuel Honeycutt. But Dad would later say that he got the name from the idea that turning his pack of Plott dogs loose on a bear was like putting it in a pen. And so I think probably he's the one that named it, so we'll go with his version there. But at any rate, Bear Pen Honey was later sold to Paul Hubbard in Michigan, prominent Plott man of that day. And then he was a good friend of C.E. Bud Lyon of Athens, Georgia, and Bud had Honey when she died. Honey was bred to what is now recognized as the foundation sire of the Plott, Bear Pen Plott line. And that was a dog called Bear Pen Sam. My dad kept a pup out of that cross called Bear Pen Crockett, and Crockett was a good-looking gray brindle dog as well. So we talk about Bear Pen Sam. Bear Pen Sam was born in 1960 there at the farm of Isaiah Kidd. And Mr. Kidd sent my dad a letter saying that he had this 6-month-old pup and that he had kept him back as the pick of the litter, and he wanted my dad to have him. Sam was sired by Reverend Frank Snyder's dog, Burnett's Tom. Burnett's Tom was out of Smithdeal's John and Smithdeal's Fly. These dogs owned by Hack Smithdeal. People know the story of Hack and how he bought Little George Plott's pack when Little George left for World War II and unfortunately was drowned when his ship was sunk somewhere in the process of the Battle of Normandy. But at any rate, Burnett's Tom was the sire, and then Mr. Kidd had bred an inbred female that he called Jeep, spelled Geep, and she was out of Kidd's Rock, bred to a rock daughter named Kidd's Goldie. And that's what produced Jeep. And Jeep was a good little hound, a little shy around the box, but handled well in the woods and was a good hunter, good tree dog. So anyway, Bearpin Sam was out of Burnett's Tom and Kidd's Jeep. Now, I'll tell you a little bit later about how that figured in to the future of the Bearpin Plotts. Are you getting bored with this yet? If you're not a Plott man, you probably are. But I've been putting off for quite some time doing this account of the Bearpin Plott, so I hope you'll bear with me. Bearpin Sam was originally registered as Hardwood Sam. That Hardwood name was what my dad used when he first started registering dogs with UKC. And I already told you about the origin of the Bearpin name. I was a freshman in high school when Mr. Kidd gave Sam to my dad. And anyway, he was an excellent track dog. That's what we remember the most about Bearpin Sam. If a pack of dogs was struggling with the track, Sam was a dog that could take that track out of there, move it, get it moving, get the track jumped, and ultimately get the game treat. He did prefer bear to coon, and if you hunted him through a bear season, you'd almost have to start him over if you wanted a coon hunt that fall. I can remember road hunting him down the old CC Trail on Camp Creek there in Mercer County, West Virginia, and have Sam throw that head in the air and drop down off the side and climb back the other side and strike a cold track, a coon track that he could trail up, get it running, and get it treed. He was just a tremendous track dog. He had a unique treeing style. He would go down to the tree, smell as high as he could on the tree, then sit down and start backpedaling as he's barking. And he sometimes would get quite a ways away from the base of the tree before he'd run back down, start the process all over again. But I'll remember always Bearpin Sam, that beautiful howling ball mouth that he had, and the way that he could really move a track. Reverend Frank Snyder of Augusta, West Virginia, was a coon and bear hunter, he and his son Lane, and they wanted to breed a female to Bearpin Sam since they had owned his sire, Burnett's Tom. So that did occur, and the result was a stud fee pup that my dad kept that he called Bearpin Rip. And Rip was born in 1970, and he was sired again by Bearpin Sam and out of Snyder's Gypsy Brindy. Now, Brindy was a Texas-bred female, and she carried back in the third, fourth, and fifth generation some of the real recognizable old-time Plotts and some of the kennels of those that day. She had the breeding of Dwayne Hurd of Kansas area out there. Everybody knows Steve Hurd in the Plott breed, Dwayne's son. Also the breeding of the Washburn brothers of New Mexico. They were famous bear hunters. Their kennel name was Clear Current Plotts at that time. They later had other breeds. But, and of course, Dale Brandenburger's Pioneer Drum was in Brindy's third generation. So that was the breeding on Snyder's Gypsy Brindy. And so Bearpin Sam, bred to Brindy, produced the dog we called Bearpin Rip. And we'll be talking more about him as we go along here in a few minutes. during the time that my dad had Sam, he also had another really good Plott dog that was named Bearpin Hoss. Now, Hoss was a dark brindle dog. He was what I would call an old line Brandenburger bred dog. He was born in 1962. That was 2 years before I graduated high school. And he's really the dog that made a coon hunter out of me. I liked Hoss. I loved to hunt with him. And he was a dog that you could depend on in a night hunt to get struck straight on coon. And of course, he would run a bear, but in a coon hunting environment, he was not trashy. He had a good mouth. He could move a track, and he was a solid tree dog with a nice throaty, heavy chop mouth on tree. And he passed that on to his pups. But at any rate, Hoss was the dog I was hunting when I won my very first night hunt trophy, and that was at the Southeastern Ohio Championship in Barlow, Ohio. I placed sixth, and I've said before I probably rubbed all the paint off of that trophy by the time I got it back home to West Virginia. I was so proud of it. Hoss was a beautiful hound, and he earned a cover shot on the International Plott Hound Hunters Yearbook in 1973. 1974. He was the old line, as I said, Brandenburger breeding. He had the Smithdale breeding behind him, and Nichols breeding, and of course Brandenburger's Cherokee Joe and Brandenburger's June were two of the dogs that were in his pedigree. Now, I mentioned earlier that Fielder's June was first bred to a dog called Pettit's Timber Tim. Tim was owned by Harry Pettit in Athens, Ohio. I've told the story of Tim jumping off a cliff when my dad shook a coon out before, but Tim was the sire of Bearpin Hoss. And Hoss really produced some nice-looking dogs. And one of them was a dog named Bearpin Coley. Coley was the dog that I hunted when I went in the Air Force in 1969 and went to San Angelo, Texas. And my dad shipped him out by rail to me, and I hunted with those fellas all around San Angelo with the Plott dog named Coley. And Coley had a litter mate that we called Blue Joe, that was a Maltese brindle dog. And I have pictures of my dad with a really nice 300-plus pound sow bear that he killed over Coley and Joe on Back Creek in Monroe County, West Virginia, many years ago. Of course, that was actually would have been in the early 70s. Again, these two dogs, Coley and Joe, were out of Bearpin Hoss and Bearpin Honey. We had a dog called Bearpin Rowdy that was sired by Hoss. That was a real nice dog, and he was a dog that I hunted when I came home from the military. And the first Plott days that I attended in August of 1973 in Flora, Illinois. That happened to be the year that I met Fred Miller and would ultimately lead to my employment with UKC. But anyway, Rowdy was the dog I was hunting. Beautiful brown brindle dog, well muscled up, houndy looking dog, good heavy mouth. And his dam was a female named Big Otter Rose, and she was owned by J.C. Crookshank, who was well known in Plott circles at that time. And Rose was sired by a real popular stud dog back in those days, Dilt's Cold Creek Bouncer. He was a dual grand champion owned by Ron and Don Diltz of Illinois. And Rose's dam was an Everett Weems bred female named Weems Plott Kathy. I did place Rowdy at Plott Days the first year that I entered him after coming home from the service. But my dad was beginning then at that time, the early 70s, to kind of expand his horizons a little bit in the bear hunting arena, and wanted to get some of the blood of some of the more popular, or let's say famous, Plott stud dogs at that time. So the decision was made to sell Rowdy to Elmer Eisenbrown in Pennsylvania, and Elmer kept him until he died. He was a very nice coon dog, and but the hoss-bred dog worked really well on bear as well as coon, but Dad was looking for more speed in the pack. And speed kind of became my dad's mantra, or his philosophy over the years to come in bear dogs. He liked them fast. He wanted dogs that ran to the front. He wanted a dog with a good nose, but that would run to catch, would have enough bite to put the bear up or hold it at bay. And these were just some of his goals. And again, my dad was pretty private when it came to his dogs. He didn't do advertising. Any ads that came out on bear pen dogs were my doing, not my dad's for sure, because he wasn't in it for any commercial reason or actually for recognition. He just loved to hunt, and he loved to hunt with a good dog. So this now takes us in the bear pen story to what I call the Weems introduction. My dad and Everett Weems of Salem, Illinois, were the same age. They were contemporaries. I think they were both born in 1920. And through conversations at Plott days and so forth, my dad and Everett talked about their origins in the breed. And Everett talked about a dog called Weems Plott Dan. Now, Dan was out of a female named Green's Daisy May and a kid-bred male dog. Well, Bearpen Sam, who, as I've said, became the foundation sire of these Bearpen dogs, was out of Burnett's Tom, who was a litter mate to Green's Daisy May. And, of course, Sam's mother was Kid's Jeep, a straight kid-bred dog. So Bearpen Sam and Weems Plott Dan were very closely, or they had common dogs in their pedigrees. And so Everett asked my dad if it would be possible to breed to Sam. And, of course, Dad was more than willing to allow that. Because he had an ulterior motive. He wanted a pup out of Sam and one of Everett's females, but he also wanted to get a dog out of Everett's Butch dog, Weems Plott Butch. He had heard about Butch. He wanted to try some of these pretty much straight Weems bred dogs. So Butch had been bred to a female named Jill. Now, Jill was out of Ursa's Rowdy. Ursa's Rowdy was a litter mate to Weems Plott John, who was the sire of Weems Plott Butch. So there we begin to see this line breeding, this family breeding coming into the picture. So on April 5th of 1973, a female puppy was born, or a litter was born, which was the first litter of the Weems, Butch, and Jill dogs. Plott hunters and fanciers have heard of this cross for many, many years. It was made, I believe, 6 times, maybe more. There were very many outstanding dogs in the cross. I'm sure there were some that weren't so outstanding. But from that first litter was a female that we named Bearpen Fancy. We brought her home from Plott days in August, and she was a beautiful, dark, brindle female, would have a gray mouth as time went on. She became a show champion in UKC. She treated her first coon when she was 7 months old. She went on to the first year I hunted her in eastern Ohio in Belmont County, and she helped to tree 80 coons that fall. Just a really nice dog. And my dad put her on Bear, and that's where she really shined. She became an excellent bear dog. She ran to the front. She could outrun most any pack of dogs. In fact, one of the hunters one time told my dad, he said, "I really like Fancy, but her fault is she won't pack back to the other dogs." But anyway, she did get injured several times. She got bit through the muzzle on both sides one time. One time she got bit clear through the brisket. Another time she was hit apparently very hard in the abdomen area and suffered a rupture. And when she was recovered off that bear, her intestines were hanging in a pouch, a rupture, a hernia there. It looked like a basketball hanging down. She was gritty as she could be, had a unique mouth, a very hard tree dog, a beautiful female. And we're proud that she was inducted into the MPHA Hall of Fame in 1987 as a deceased big game dog. Okay, so now we've got this Weems bred dog in the picture here. And we've got Bearpin Sam, we've got Rip, a son of Sam. My dad made the decision because Rip and Fancy were very much alike in their speed, their nose, their drive, their treeing, and all these things. Although Rip was a beautiful kind of brown or golden brown brindle dog, and Fancy was what we call a dark brindle dog. But anyway, the decision was made to breed Fancy to Rip, and that was done at the end of February in 1977. Now, from that cross, we got two females that we kept out of the litter. Both were black back with brindle trim. One of them had a lot more black than brindle, and we named her Bearpin Plott Blackie. The other one was Bearpin Plott Dixie. Dixie and Blackie both started very early. They were real ambitious. I had to break both of them off deer. They were looking for something to run when you cut them loose. I did get them broke fairly easily. Dixie was making an outstanding bear dog when she injured the carpal joint on one of her front legs, to the point that when she'd run for 30 minutes or so, it would swell up like a baseball or a softball, and she would have to carry it. And so my dad made the tough decision to sell Dixie, and Wayne Griggs, who was secretary of the Plott Association at that time, or maybe slightly before, actually I believe at about that time, purchased her and hunted her on coon for several years there in Indiana. And Dixie, unfortunately, was killed by a train while she was running a coon. Well, Blackie was the female that we kept. And I would have to say, looking back over the years, that Blackie was my all-time favorite Plott female coonhound. Fancy was good. I liked Fancy. Dixie was good on coon. I liked her too. There was just something about Blackie, and I think it was her drive and determination, her speed on track, that made her my favorite. But anyway, my dad also had gone back to that Butch and Jill well when the third litter of those dogs was born on February 25th of 1976. He purchased another Butch Jill dog from Everett Weems that we call Bearpin Little Butch. Now, Little Butch was a typically Weems bred looking dog. He had that flat crown to his head, his ears kind of rolled off the top of his head, medium ear. He had a heavy front flag tail, much like a foxhound, actually. And we saw that in the Weems and in the Cascade dogs of that day. But anyway, Butch had a cold nose. He was fast on track. He was a drifting track dog, had a beautiful ball mouth, and he was extremely aggressive on game. In fact, I often thought that Butch would probably get killed by a bear because he really mixed it up with the bear. I remember one time Bronco, who we'll talk about in a minute, cold trailed a bear into a hollow tree. And as we got there and pulled the dogs back, sow bear, we didn't know at the time it was a sow, but anyway, a sow bear came out of the tree, backed down, bailed off over the mountain. The dogs were released just for a second chase, and soon after the dogs were gone out of sight, 2 cubs of about 40 pounds came out of the tree. So we had bear, dogs, and then bear going down the mountain. Anyway, the pack did catch up with the sow, treat her about 4 or 5 times. And on a couple of those occasions, Little Butch, we called him, was up on the bear's back, grabbing her by the scruff of the neck. So he's also a dog that I took what's now become a famous picture of Little Butch and Bronco fighting a bear in an icy stream in December in West Virginia. And you can see these 2 Plott dogs grabbing the bear by the back of the neck and standing it up and actually jerking it over backwards. And but anyway, Butch, unfortunately, at 5 years old, died of a heart attack. I was feeding Butch, and he took a couple of bites out of his food and dropped dead right on his feet. He didn't choke. There was nothing in his air passage, but a very big loss for us because he really was a nice dog. Well, that moves us into what I'll call now the Cascade introduction into the bear pen Plotts. Are you bored yet? I hope you're hanging in there with me. When I was in Japan, I came home in July of 1973. But while I was there, I had read the stories of the big brown bears on the northern island of Hokkaido, Japan. And there would be newspaper stories of how these bears would come down out of the mountains in the wintertime. Because of lack of feed and the cold and the ice, they would come down into the villages, and they were known to be man-eaters, man-killers. Several people had been killed by these big brown bear. I imagine they were akin to the Kodiak bear or the bear on Kamchatka Peninsula. But any rate, I knew a hunter, and many people did, named D. DeMoss of Olympia, Washington. And Dee's wife was Japanese, and he had been over to Japan and hunted these big brown bears. I contacted him because I wanted to get the opportunity to go kill one of those big bears. And I talked to Dee, and he told me that unfortunately, the ministry, the wildlife ministry in Japan, had stopped the practice of allowing foreign nationals to hunt those bears. So I was not able to get a license to do so. But in the process of our conversations, I talked to him about the possibility of getting a Cascade bred pup to hunt when I got out of service. And he told me that I should contact Oliver Smith III, an attorney in Knoxville, Tennessee, and get a pup from him, since Tennessee was a whole lot closer to my home state of West Virginia. I made arrangements with Oliver to get a puppy sired by the dog that Oliver had bought from D. DeMoss, named Cascade Big Timber. Timber sold for what was then a record price for a Plott dog, $5,000. was the price that was going around. And anyway, Oliver said, well, he had a pup that was out of timber, or a litter coming out of timber, and a female named Smithvale's Brenda. She was a Cascade bred dog as well. Now, in these Cascade dogs, you would find a dog called Cascade Candy, and Candy was a litter mate to Weems' Plott John. So there was a connection there to the Weems dogs as well. Anyway, I made arrangements to purchase the puppy, and my parents had picked this pup up, which I named Stony, from Oliver prior to my coming home. Stony and Bearpin Fancy were about the same age. And as we began to hunt these pups, we could readily see that Fancy was improving with every trip to the woods. She was just a natural and looked to be a real standout. Stony, on the other hand, was kind of hit and miss. It seemed like his heart was in it some days, and other days it wasn't. And so, to make a long story short, Stony did not make it, did not make the Bearpin pack, and Oliver Smith took him up to Wisconsin bear hunting and agreed with our assessment of Stony that he just didn't have what it takes. And that happens in dogs. That's no indictment against Oliver or against his dogs, anything else. It's just what happens at times. But at any rate, there was about a year rocked on there, I think. And one day I got a phone call. And it was from Oliver Smith, secretary, his law office there in Knoxville, Tennessee, saying that my puppy was going to be shipped the next day. Well, that was confusing to me because I had not ordered a pup, nor did I expect a pup. My agreement with Oliver was that he could take Stony back and have the dog with, no strings attached. But she says, oh, no, this is your dog. My instructions are to ship it to you. I just want to make sure I've got the address and information right. So, again, to cut to the chase, that puppy arrived, and he was a beautiful, kind of a golden brindle puppy, very bold. I remember him getting out of the airline crate and setting him down in the middle of that bearpin pack in that large pen that my dad had. And he just kind of went around and met everybody and then sat down in the middle of the pen and said, well, I'm here. I'm going to be here. You guys might as well get used to it. And that was pretty much the story. The pup, I named him Bearpin Plott's Bronco. He was out of a well-known bear hunter and became a dear friend, and is sadly missed, Mr. Barry Tarleton of Greenville, Tennessee. Had a female named Tarleton's Roberta. Roberta was sired by White Hollow Jr. White Hollow Jr. was sired by Weems' Plott John. We've mentioned him before. He was the sire of Weems Butch, Hog Swampland Joe, Pleasant Valley Bale, other dogs there. But anyway, Roberta was Bronco's dam, and she was a top flight bear dog in her own right. Mr. Tarleton kept a dog out of that Bronco's litter as well, that he called John, I believe, that had gained a reputation as a bear dog. Roberta had some interesting litter mates. One was a dog called Houston's Jr., owned by Bobby Joe Houston in Florida. One called Creasman's Killer, owned by Ronnie Creasman. There was one named, let me get this right now, Freeman's Rocky. That was a very popular bear dog, and I think was hunted by the Brown brothers there in Tellico Plains, Tennessee. And Shelby Ballard who was a prominent figure in the National Plott Hound Association in those days, had a Grand Night champion female that was a sister to Roberta named Ballard's Carolina Judy. Excuse me. So anyway, Roberta was Bronco's mother. Bronco was pretty much run on bear until he was 3 years of age. And by happenstance, because my Blackie female was in heat, I took him to an RQE in Ohio, and he performed really well. And that's what kind of piqued my interest in hunting him more on coon, which I did. He continued to be hunted on bear. He was pretty much a running mate to Weems' Little Butch, and hunted with Bearpin Fancy. So with Bearpin Fancy, Bronco, and Little Butch, my dad and I had a pretty tight group of bear dogs right there. And there were some others that I won't name just because we need to get along with this. But at any rate, Bronco was an excellent coon dog. He was a cold trailer. He could cold trail a bad track in February on frozen ground and come up with the coon on the outside. He was fast on bear. He was a good cold trailer on bear. I mentioned him cold trailing that sow bear into a hollow tree. But at any rate, Bronco won the all Plott hunt at MPHA Plott Days in Langsburg, Michigan in 1986, and ultimately he was inducted into the MPHA Hall of Fame in 1993. Now, we did breed Bronco to several females, different females. People would bring in females to breed to him, but Bearpin Fancy was bred to Bronco. And we got an outstanding female out of that cross that we called Bearpin Fancy 2, or we commonly called her Little Fancy. She was just a really top-flight little dog. She was used on coon primarily, also used to cold trail bear. I know at the Michigan State Championship one year there, Todd Kellum, who is now vice president at UKC, handled Fancy, and I think he scored over 900 points in the cast that night. Fancy died cold trailing a bear. Basically what happened was she was put on this track that they were having trouble starting, and Fancy took it, and it went into a rough area there in Southwest Virginia. My brother was hunting her. Snowstorm came in, basically shut down that area, although he had a signal from her beep collar, telemetry collar. He knew that she wasn't moving. When the weather permitted, he was able to get in there and found that she had sought shelter under a huge rock outcropping and had died. It was a loss to us. Fancy was not a young dog at that time, I think about 9 years old, but she was a really good one, and she was out of Bronco and Bearpin Fancy. Now, Bronco was bred to Fancy's daughter, Bearpin Plott Blackie, and that was really a smart move on our part, because in that litter came a female that we called Bronco's Fancy Julie. Julie became a really good bear dog and was my dad's actually last bear dog of any consequence, as he got, as we all will someday, too old to follow the dogs in the woods. But fortunately, he was hunting with an extremely knowledgeable and capable hunter, John Harris, there in West Virginia when he had Julie. And Julie was hunted with John's great bear dog, Santana, and lots of bears were treed. Now, Julie was an excellent rig dog. She would rig off the box, and she would go to the bear track, and you could depend on her. And just a top dog all the way around, and she was inducted into the MPHA Hall of Fame in 2006. Now, I want to make a little point here for those of you, these questions have come up over time, about whether or not you can use the same dog for big game or for coon. Now, I've talked about several dogs here today already, and all of these dogs that I've mentioned to you were hunted both ways. They were hunted on coon, they were hunted on bear. Some of them were hunted in competition, some were not. But we found down through the years that it made absolutely no difference in hunting the dogs on coon and on bear too. Now, I realize some of the guys in the northern part of the country do break their dogs off coon, but coon were not so thick in the mountains where we hunted that became a problem for us. Now, Julie, for instance, being an outstanding bear dog and recognized as a bear dog by the MPHA, she also was a really nice coon dog. I can remember one time when she was about 2 years old, cutting her loose just as a thunderstorm rolled in. And I heard her run a track and come treat in a fence row about, I'm going to say, an eighth of a mile or so from the truck. I beat it back to the truck because it was beginning to rain rather hard, and I could hear Julie treeing. I sat in the truck for a good period of time. I'm going to say maybe 30 minutes. And when the rain slackened and I got out, Julie was still treed under that raccoon. She'd treed through all that lightning and pouring rain. So at any rate, I just tell that little story to make the point that you can hunt the dogs both ways. And I wonder in the Plott breed today if we're losing some of the locating tree dog aspects of the Plott breed. When I grew up, when I was a young man and my dad was getting involved in Plotts and down through the years, the Plott dog was a tree dog first and foremost. I just wonder if that's true today. I'm not saying it isn't, but I'd be interested to hear from some Plott hunters and breeders out there to tell me whether or not they think that their Plott big game dogs still possess the ability to locate on scent and stay treed. Anyway, Bearpin Plott Blackie was then bred to what I think was probably overall the best cross. And that was when I took her down to Salem, Illinois, and bred her to her uncle, night champion Weems Plott Puny. Puny being out of Butch and Jill, and Blackie's mother, Fancy, being out of Butch and Jill, made it an uncle-niece cross. And from that litter of puppies, and they all made pretty good dogs. In fact, we got reports from around the country of people that hunted those dogs. But one of the puppies went to Texas with a good friend and hunter named Charlie Hill of Hempstead, Texas. Now, Charlie has since passed on. He was a fellow that I enjoyed so much seeing at the Texas State Championship and at Plott Days. But anyway, Charlie got this puppy, and we began to hear news coming back out of Texas by some well-known Plott hunters that would hunt with Charlie, guys like Tom Telford. Plott people know Tom very well, and Harold Pace, who unfortunately has passed away within the last year or so, about the exploits of this young Plott dog that Charlie named Hills Plott Solomon. And Solomon, his calling card was his speed. And, of course, that was the thing that turned my dad on the most about a Plott dog. So anyway, I had a little Plott female that was out of Bronco's Fancy Julie. We spoke about Julie being out of Bronco and Blackie. And McLennan's Milton. Now, Milton was a son of John Harris's Santana dog. Santana was also a bobcat dog, and John hunted him in the wintertime on bobcats in West Virginia. And due to frostbite, he became sterile. And of course, my dad wanted to breed Julie to Santana, but because of that, he bred to a son of Santana named Milton. And Milton was a top bear dog in his own right. And so from that litter, we kept a nice light brindle colored female that I named Bear Pen Santina Grande, which, of course, the Santina, a spin off of Santana, and we simply called her Tina. And so I took Tina down to Texas. The UKC American Heritage Hunt was taking place at that time. And so when Charlie Hill came over to the grounds to pick up Tina and take her back to be bred, he brought a pup out of Solomon along, about 3 months old, out of Solomon, and a female that went back to Harold Pace's breeding. And anyway, I got to thinking about that, and I said, I may not get pups out of Solomon and Tina, and I think I better try to buy this pup out of Solomon. And so I talked to Charlie, and he did sell me the pup. And my good friend Harold Kirkus, who worked with Purina all those years from Oklahoma, and Harold's now passed away too. And it just pains me a lot to talk about these great guys that I knew so well that have now passed on. But anyway, Harold agreed to take this pup that I named Wrangler back to Oklahoma the following week or so, bring him up to Iowa to Walker Days, where I picked him up and took him back to West Michigan. So then now I have 2 dogs out of Solomon because Tina did, in fact, have puppies. My brother, Randy, raised the litter in Virginia for me, and we kept a dark brindle male out of that litter that I named Rio Grande Roper. So Roper and Wrangler were half brothers, 6 months in age, separated them, with Wrangler being the older. And they were really the 2 last bear pen dogs that I had of any consequence. When I had those 2 dogs, I knew that I had an outstanding pair of Plott dogs. Without getting into a lot of the details, people will remember when I had Roper, I bred him to virtually all the top Plott females that one year. Capital City Sam's Go Annie was one of them. Ronnie Barber's Windy female was one of them. I know Christina Officer brought a nice female and bred to him. Vernon Walker bred a nice well, actually, that was bred to Bronco. I'll back up on that. But at any rate, Roper did produce some really nice dogs. He started early. At about 7 months old, he was tree and coon on his own. I hunted him virtually all over, hunted him at Plott Days, placed him there. My good friend Heath Hyatt hunted him quite a bit for me, won an RQE of 50-some dogs in Virginia with him, and also we just really enjoyed Roper. And then Wrangler would go on to win the Isaiah Kidd Award opposite sex in 1997 when Heath Hyatt and Brandy won the overall. And but Roper and Wrangler both were good reproducers. And that was one thing that I thought, over all these years of these dogs that I've mentioned here, down through this line, to see them still producing good dogs. Roper produced a dog called Barth's Treeing Trigger that was owned by Chad Barth up in Minong, Wisconsin. And Trigger himself produced some good dogs. In fact, but Trigger was the result of breeding Roper to his half-sister, Mike Cawley's Bayou Cajun Blackie. Blackie was a litter mate to Wrangler, a half-sister to Roper. And so that was an outstanding bear dog there that came out of Roper. And then Evan Workman's drum dog. Evan and his friend Scotty Swiger are still hunting dogs out of Drum, or grandpups out of Drum. And Drum was out of Roper, and Capital City Sam's Go Annie. And on Wrangler's side of things, he produced a dog called Barth's Solid Rock that was really a tremendous bear dog. Many people that hunted with Rock said that he was the best they ever saw. He was particularly good at cold trailing bears. He was owned by Chad Barth up in Minong, Wisconsin. And, Ben Jones there in Greenville, Tennessee, who is a great-grandson of Barry Tarleton that I mentioned. He's the son of Tracy Jones, who is Barry's grandson. They had an outstanding dog named Doc that was out of Trigger, which made him a grandson of Roper. And Carl Chotel up in Wisconsin, who is president of the Wisconsin Bear Hunters, I'm not sure if he still is, but he had some of this breeding with Roper and Wrangler in the pedigree. So I'm just kind of proud that those dogs did produce. And, so from Bear Pen Rip and Fancy, of course, Rip being out of Bear Pen Sam, the first one. And then there came Bear Pen Plott Blackie, And then Blackie was bred to Bronco, and that produced Bronco's Fancy Julie. And then from Blackie and Puny came Hill's Plott Solomon. And, of course, Tina produced, Julie produced Tina, and Tina produced Roper. So, it's all in the family line that came down. It's basically really started in 1954, but the continuous line started in 1960 with Bear Pen Sam. I wanted to mention real quickly another cross that was a good one was when Bear Pen Fancy was bred to Gene White's little junior dog. And that produced a couple of dogs we call Boss and Brandy. And Brandy out of that cross was later bred to the James Brown's Thumper dog, who was a son of Weems Plott Bandit. And Bandit was another Butch Gill dog. So you see the line breeding, the family breeding of these dogs. And that cross produced, a Thumper to Brandy, produced some really nice bear dogs, some of them in the Hall of Fame, including Bob Giesey's Gabby. The Brown boys had Eagle and Yeller, and so that was a real good cross. And then, there's just so much to say about these dogs, but I don't want to brag about them. I just want to state the facts that they were good, solid dogs that you could take to the woods and catch game. And they brought an awful lot of pleasure to my dad and me. Another little dog that we had out of that breeding was a dog we called Pee-wee. His name was Bear Pen Top Hand. And he was sired by a son of Bronco and Fancy named Bronco Billy. Bronco Billy was killed while bear hunting. Billy was bred to Gary Vance's Sissy female, and she was out of Weems Butch. And Brandy out of the White Hollow Little Junior and Bear Pen Fancy cross was bred to Bronco and produced a real nice dog that we call Bronco's Pride. And Mr. Paul May of Shenandoah, Virginia, another dear friend that has gone on, bought Lefty from my dad, and he became an outstanding bear dog. Perhaps the last of the bear dogs that I was associated closely with was the dog that I bought from Everett Weems. I named her Bear Pen Song of the South. She was out of Weems Stormy, and Hannah. I bought her when she was 8 months old out of the pen there in Salem, Illinois. Took her back to Michigan, started her on coon, sent her down to Virginia. My dad put her on bear, and the first one she ever smelled, she ran it for 5 hours. She was hunted 3 seasons in Arizona by my friend Tom David of Summit Outfitters. She helped to tree 40-some bears for Tom, and Tom nominated her for the MPHA Hall of Fame, and she was inducted in the year 2007. So Singer made the 4th of the bear pen line that were inducted into the Hall of Fame. Well, moving on, and due to my work in the registries and my dad's age, and I may have mentioned that he passed in October of 2008, the bear pen Plott as a strain have no longer been bred by the Fielder family. But from 1954 to 2008, my dad had nothing but a Plott in the pen, and that was a span of 54 years. His dogs were all UKC registered. He believed in UKC registration. In fact, he was a little insulted years ago when the AKC contacted him and wanted him to submit his pedigrees so that they could build their stud files on the Plott. He never did any crossbreeding. He always bred them exactly the way the papers said they were bred. And he never raised puppies for profit, although he did sell an occasional pup out of a litter if he had some to spare. He liked a houndy-looking Plott. He always said that to me. He wanted speed in his dogs. That's why often he would frustrate me as a kid by holding his dogs back until the other dogs were gone out of hearing, and then turning his loose so to see how quickly they would pack to the front and who would be leading the race the next time they crossed. My dad was inducted into the West Virginia Bear Hunters Hall of Fame, something he was very proud of, and I was too. He had served as the president of the West Virginia Bear Hunters and did a lot of fighting for the hound hunters of West Virginia, especially in the area of discouraging the clear cutting of our national forests there. He was inducted into the MPHA Hall of Fame in May of 2019. And I have here in front of me the certificate that I received. Unfortunately, my dad never did get to see this. But I want to read this in closing, and I want to thank you for being patient with me today as I tell the story of my family and our Plott dogs. I hope that I know that there's a story out there that you could tell, and perhaps I can get you on the podcast and we can share it with the audience. But this certificate says, National Plott Hound Association Hall of Fame. This certificate is proudly presented to a steadfast and loyal member for his exemplary leadership and contribution to MPHA legend Homon Fielder. And I most like this scripture verse that's included on this citation. It says from Romans 13:7, Render therefore to all their due, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. I knew my dad very well, naturally. I can say with confidence that my dad never lied to me. He was a tremendous hunting buddy, and he passed the legacy of the bear pen Plotts down to me. I just wish that I could have kept it going as long as he did. He was 88 when he died. But at any rate, that's the story of the bear pen Plotts. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I haven't bored you too much. I hope to see many of you at the Grand American the weekend following this podcast airing. And I'll just close this out as I always do. If someone asks you, where's Steve Fielder? Tell him he's gone to the dogs.